Amanda Clinton, head of Clinton Consultancy, is our guest this morning on the AM show. Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning.
Did you have a good weekend?
It was quite pleasant. Yourself?
Yeah, it was fabulous. It's good to have you. Let's get straight into what you want to reflect on this morning. You have about a minute and a half, at most 2 minutes, to walk us through that.
Well, I think that it's been hinted that Mahama hints at national airline, and I think that would be quite, patriotic to have a national airline, although airlines are incredibly expensive to run in terms of profit margins. And the second big headline that hit us, I think, in the last 48 hours is that Ken Ofori-Atta is suing the OSP based on, was it professionally misconduct on the OSP's part to declare him a wanted person, and could he possibly have dealt with this through his lawyers as opposed to dealing with it in the media in terms of, issuing his responses in the media.
Yeah.
So those are the two things I think I picked up on in the last 48 hours.
Did you see the statement from the OSP this morning? It just came in, actually, where they're saying that, well, they are waiting on his in-person meeting on the 2nd of June, 2025. And if he fails to appear, they would re-enter his name as a wanted man. But I think what he's challenging is if the OSP has the power to unilaterally declare him a wanted man. But, well, let's see where that goes. Ben, quick comments before we get into the papers.
Oh, I mean, it is what it is. We'll wait for that test in the law courts and see how it goes in that respect. There are two angles: the human rights angle of what must you do before you can maybe come search my property and all of that. Then there's also the accountability angle, where people want to see if any past officials have dabbled in anything that they ought not to have done, that there's accountability. So we'll wait for the law courts to determine what it is on both counts.
Let me start with the Daily Graphic. On the front page, inferior cement on markets. New manufacturers violate production process. Ofori-Atta sues OSP. We're just getting a bite of that. OPCL property acquired Chinese company shares in Ghana bauxite. CRI advocates detailed documents for educational interventions. And be bold in expanding your businesses. EcoBank executive urges women. And lastly, Zenith Bank opens first ever banking clinic for tertiary students. I think I want to start from the very first story here about inferior cement on the market. Some recently established cement manufacturers are substituting limestone, a key raw material in cement production, with cheaper and inferior alternatives, insiders have revealed. In separate interviews, the Daily Graphic, industry players and regulatory officials revealed that certain manufacturers, some of whom have been caught in the act, are replacing limestone with quarry dust, clay, silica, and other low-grade substitutes. That's worrying. Let me get into the paper and see what other story I can add to that before we get into our analysis and discussions. Just for the benefit of our audience, let me get into the story of Ofori-Atta sues OSP. So the former Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, has filed a lawsuit against Office of the Special Prosecutor and the Special Prosecutor, Kisi Ajabeng, over the declaration of the anti-graft agency that he was a fugitive from justice and a wanted man. Of course, the application for the enforcement of his fundamental human rights and Article 33 of the 1992 Constitution was filed on March 13th, and now we're getting a response today, March 17th. And lastly, CRI advocates detailed documents for educational interventions. That's Child Rights International is urging the government to develop a comprehensive policy document to guide the effective implementation of key educational interventions outlined in the 2025 budget statement and economic policy. That is free senior high school and free school feeding. Of course, there's a sanitary pad issue in there, and they're asking that there should be a proper framework so that there will be no confusion going forward. Amanda, I want to reflect on any of these stories before I go on.
Well, I think the leading story is, of course, Ken Ofori-Atta's story.
Yeah.
Mainly because it hinges on Article 23 of the Constitution, that although the OSP obviously has quite wide-ranging power, Article 23 states that administrative bodies and administrative officials shall act fairly and reasonably and comply with the requirements imposed on them by law. And so the standard here for any judge might be could it be said that, you know, the OSP was just issuing these declarations publicly, despite knowing that he had lawyers that were communicating with them, and instead they did it publicly? And so is that fair to issue these media briefings rather than through the appropriate legal channels?
From my understanding, they're saying that was a last resort because they tried to reach him and he was not forthcoming. And so they had to take it to the public, to the media.
Of course. And so all they will have to do in court perhaps would be to adduce that evidence that on such and such date we either try to reach him or his lawyers.
Yeah.
And this was the official notice we gave them, and, that's what happened. But, public interest in national security might not justify media declarations if they had a channel to reach him, and yet they wanted this trial by media sort of thing. And so that's what's probably going to be looked at in this case. But it is an important point to make because, this trial by media, yes, he's a high-profile person. It's a big deal. He's got these 5 cases against him, but he hasn't been formally charged. And if he did let the OSP know, these are my lawyers, and these lawyers were constantly communicating with the OSP, and then the lawyers can prove that the OSP would rather, declare this in public, I very much think that it would be in violation of Article 23 of the Constitution.
Okay, let's do some other stuff. I like how your papers are all on the table. Right. There's a story here. Affirmative action accelerating Ghana's gender equality. And Ghana's journey towards gender equality took a significant step forward with the passage of the Affirmative Action, and that is Gender Equality Act on July 30th. And this, I think it's an editorial, but I saw something that I thought was interesting. It says, despite the progress made, there are persistent cultural stereotypes and societal norms that hinder the full realization of gender equality in Ghana. Do you agree that we still have systemic cultural stereotypes and norms that hinder the full realization of gender equality in Ghana? Yes, of course, we are excited that we passed the affirmative action law. And I know some stakeholders are also saying that we should actually look at how we are going to implement this. It's a lot of work. You have to cushion or make provisions for women who want to run for office, members of parliament. We're talking about, reserving a seat for them. There's so many things that go in there before we can realize gender equality. But your take on this?
I think gender equality is pretty high in Ghana in terms of, for me, it's a very much of a matriarchal society. I find Ghana a matriarchal society. I think women are very empowered with the markets. For instance, a lot of women get a lot of money through, leading at the markets, etc. And I think the avenue for women in gender equality is to make a role for themselves in terms of entrepreneurship, etc. In terms of political representation, it's not by force. You know what I mean? It's the will of the people, ultimately. But we do have a vice president who is, female, which is wonderful, the first time in Ghana's history. And, over time, perhaps Mahama will introduce more and more females into his cabinet. Who knows?
Right. Well, thank you. Those are just some stories here. Let me do the back page and then we, or should we usher in our second guest into the conversation at this point? We have the former Deputy Director for NIB, Mr. Alfred Thompson. Sir, thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you.
Usually we give our guests a couple of minutes to walk us through their trail of thoughts or if they want to reflect on any topical issue. You just joined us. Anything particularly you want to talk about before we continue with the newspapers?
Maybe I'll do that for us. You are going on.
Okay, so on the back page, Summertech split points with Kotoko and Dreams FC Stan Hearts. So pick a copy for yourself and get into the other stories. Let's look at some other stories now, Benjamin.
So let's get into the Ghanaian Times newspaper. And I will work with utmost seriousness, new IGP assures. That's Mr. Christian Tete, you all know. And OTRCC adopts non-partisan strategy to foster development. GJA demands full-scale investigation into attacks on 3 journalists covering illegal mining, and Ghana Post to integrate 24-hour economy into operations. Recently, we heard of Bice Osaikufu, I believe, is that his name? Obwo, I believe that's his name, Bice, resigning from leading that entity. Then on the back page, struggling Dreams FC stun hearts in Accra. I believe that story was just mentioned a short while ago. And Kotoko share points with FC Samatex. Let me go to the IGP story, then I'll do the journalist story, and we'll take it from there. I'll head to page 12 for starters. So, the newly sworn-in Inspector General of Police, Christian Tete Yono, has assured respect for traditions and culture of the Ghana Police Service as he takes office as a new police chief. In his acceptance speech at a swearing-in on Friday, IGP Yono said he was dedicated to fostering a service that was grounded in professionalism, transparency, accountability, and fairness, and respect for seniority within the chain of command. The IGP said he would approach his responsibility with the utmost seriousness, fully recognizing the weight of expectations accompanying the role. And of course, we had the president also give him his charge to keep. And we've heard from the former IGP, Dr. George Ekufu Dampare, who has also been thankful for the time to serve. He thanked the president for the kind words and all of that. Let me start with you, Alfred. Just briefly on this story, what's your reaction in terms of the change? Sometime last year, we had a deputy IGP situation, and Yono was in the picture again, and here he is now as the main man himself.
And thank you and good morning to everyone and fellow panelists. I would say it's bound to happen. I mean, everybody wants to work with someone he's comfortable with. And so we're expecting it. But should that be the norm? Because
but was the writing not on the wall even from the Ekufu administration?
That's why I said it's bound to happen. From every administration, they change it. But should it continue? That's the question. Because every person who comes there should know that you have to work professionally.
Right.
You do not owe allegiance to any president and to any party, but to the nation. And it's high time we start to let them know that and start acting that way. I think Dampare carried himself in a very good way because even within the MPP, they were angry with him about so many things he was doing and they felt it wasn't benefiting or it wasn't helping the party. So I expected that they could have maintained him. But everybody and the way they want to run their affairs. If President Mahama feels that he wants to get an IGP who would make his party comfortable, so be it.
Is it just about that, though? Because I've seen people on social media enumerate the purported sins of, and I'm just elaborating on some of them, of Dampare, including, for example, how the police handled demonstrators. I mean, there's a plethora of things. I can't off the top of my head. I wish I had the list here too. Of course, that may not be fair in some regards, but that is how some people also view the situation. And the writing had been on the wall. The last bit I'll make is that you say it's up to the president to choose. But yes, the president would want to choose someone that he feels or she feels she can adequately work with. Is that not the case? Is there anything wrong in that?
Can't you work with the person sitting there? Why can't you work with the person? Because you are supposed to be a president for all, not for party members.
Interesting question. So, when you were deputy director at the NIB, were there people you guys came to meet that you...
Definitely. You can't sack them. They are Ghanaians.
Right.
But
I mean, are there people you came to meet who had to step aside?
Step aside how?
Step aside as in when you came, they had to step aside. They had to go.
Not really.
The directors there? Not really. When you say not really, what do you mean?
Because
is it a yes or a no?
The directors are appointed by the president. So you don't have any hand in it.
That's exactly what I'm pointing to.
The general managers,
when you came, there were some people who had served as directors,
general managers
and they had to go, and you came.
The general managers are there, but from time to time we do reshuffling to make sure that people don't stay on their jobs for a long time.
Okay.
It makes them become too convenient and too... They become sometimes, if you're not careful, they do things that are not supposed to be done. So from time to time, you need to change and see how the system is moving. So that is done. But with the IGP, they have their tenure. And I believe that if the person has worked professionally through the ranks, let him be there.
An interesting question that came up. Let me bring it to Amanda.
Just to end here, please, before you go on. The earlier thing you said was that people had complained about his work.
Some people.
I believe that if you ask me today, that the police service today, as compared to previous, has it gained more respect? Yes, it has.
I agree with you that it has.
People have now believed more in the police service. There's more respect there. Everything they are doing. But in every situation, there are challenges.
Okay.
And we face them and correct them as we move along.
Okay, let me move to Amanda. And indeed, that is one of the things. When you look at the optics outside, everything happening, I think Dampare did a very good job, police visibility and all of that. But some people also say in the Ghana Police Service, administratively, there was a lot of rot going on, which is why for the first time you would see videos of some purported police officers celebrating when Dr. Dampare was ousted, right? What do you think, though? Alfred made a point that he had served, but people say, in terms of seniority, he's been in the police for 40 years. Some say it should have been him, but we have this system, even with our justices, Supreme Court, Chief Justice and all of that, where you can jump and all that. Some say it was only fair for Youno. My other bit to you is, what then happens when they are forcefully retired like this? Because at this point, he can't do anything in the Ghana Police Service. It's either Council of State or something else. It means, how then do we gain from their expertise once we put them on this road?
You know, the buck stops at the president, and respectfully, one of the president's main mandates, any president, is security. And so if he is dealing with his security mandate, he puts who he wants, and, perhaps the previous president did the same thing, etc. And yes, I can see the correlation between, you're sort of looking at Chief Justice roles. Just because a new president comes in doesn't mean you get rid of such a wise person.
But I was saying it more from the standpoint of, you can be a senior at the bar or even at the bench, and yet someone else who is a junior can be made the Chief Justice ahead of you.
Yes, but he's choosing his own people. You see what I mean? In terms of, these are people he's worked with, these are people he trusts, and this is a major issue. It's a security issue. And so he wants someone who can perhaps implement his policies, and someone he can work with, etc. And maybe he just thinks this is a better candidate. And maybe the next president who comes in will do the same thing. So the only way we can stop this happening, perhaps, is to legislate something more effectively to stop people just changing at will. But it is a security matter, and he wants to work with people who he wants to work with.
I mean, whether you look at it this way or that way, you will find justification. And there's also that matter in court, Imani Africa and Professor Kwesi Enning as well. But once the die is cast, I don't think...
Isn't it funny that Dowonu was made Deputy IGP? I mean, for the first time, we all heard
that title.
And this is the same Dowonu who has become the IGP.
But wasn't the first time?
So
I think I've heard that thing
at
some point in the past. I've heard it before.
It's been long.
It's been a long time, but I've heard it before.
But it's usually the IGP and the rest are the COPs who follow, but not the Deputy IGP. But the same person has now become the IGP. So if you are looking at party coloration, you can say that, the President Akufo-Addo felt he was NDC, but still made him a Deputy IGP. So we should be
President Akufo-Addo felt he was NDC?
I mean, right now people are saying he's NDC, that's why they brought him in. So if he felt he was NDC, then definitely they get their, their security briefing before you take an IGP or a Deputy IGP. So if he still went ahead to make him a Deputy IGP, then we should put this party coloration behind us.
PT, before I proceed, I think it's got so polarized and so dangerous in this country that everything must be NDC, NPP. We may get to the point where if you drink water from the Ghana Water Company Limited, is this NDC water? Is this NPP water?
Yeah. Over the weekend, I was watching Newsfile, and something Professor Bafwa Jimandria said that I thought was interesting. I want to know if you agree. He said he should have resigned.
Who should have resigned?
He said...
he said he should have...
Dr. George Akuffo Dampare should have resigned on his own without the statements, which people are describing as quite, I don't want to say scanty, or he didn't give a lot of detail, just saying that you're out, your home is in,
to maintain his dignity.
But they didn't write a statement that he was out. All we saw was that Yowonu has been made IGP.
Yeah.
But we didn't see any statement saying he was out.
Was that dignifying of the position of an IGP to be removed in that manner?
On the social media, I was reading somewhere that someone said that I think the lobbying from him was too much. That's why Mahama had to get him out in a hole. I think it's lawyer Kwebu. that says something
didn't
like that.
catch
No,
that.
I saw it somewhere, but what I'm saying is that everybody lobbies. If he wanted, maybe he felt that he should stay on, and it would have been nice, to tell you the truth, that they would have maintained him at least for a year, just to keep some sanity within the system and let people know that it's not at their whims and caprices that you change people, but when we think that someone is doing a good job, we should give him the chance to do it. If he doesn't want to resign and he wants it this way.
So he should have resigned, eh? Please, let's go on.
All right, so let me just wrap very quickly with the Ghanaian Times. There's Ghana to reconstruct new intermediary boundary pillars. That's according to Major General Kotia. And Ghana is to reconstruct new intermediary land boundary pillars to protect the country's land boundaries and ensure effective boundary management. Of course, that's according to the Commissioner General of the Ghana Boundary Commission, Major General Emmanuel Wickham Kotia. Our commitment to women empowerment, not in words, but action. That's according to Vice President Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman, who says government's commitment to supporting women is not just in words, but in action. A clear demonstration of this is the provision of free sanitary pads for girls in primary and senior high schools, as captured in the recently read 2025 budget. She also talks about accelerating action for a more equitable workplace. And let me just wrap with the journalists' situation. The Ghana Journalists Association has condemned attacks on 3 journalists covering illegal mining activities, also known as Galamsey, in the Western region on February 21, 2025. Theophilus Akwesi Ajay Enim of City FM or Channel 1 TV, Henry Emil Finn of Angel TV, and Jacob Eduba of ABC News Rock FM were said to have suffered from bodily injuries as a result of the assault. Addressing a press conference in Accra, so it goes on, and the president refers to it as, this attack is barbaric and we condemn it in no uncertain terms. We understand that one suspect has been arrested and is currently facing trial at Asankragwa. Let's quickly address those issues, because as for our journalists, Erastus Asare Donko or Himingteria, among others, Charlie, some of them have been brutalized, all in the name of helping fight Galamsey. And the question is, when will all this stop? Quick reflections on, I've thrown 3 bite-sized stories at you. I'll start with you, Amanda, and then I'll do Alfred. Then it's a wrap for this paper. Any thoughts?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, Alfred? So there was the Galamsey story.
There's Galamsey. I wonder how we can fight it. Because it seems that the more we fight it, the more dangerous it becomes. And
of course, they will not sit down and allow you to.
I even heard that now they are using foreigners as their guards in their forest. The 9 cloned or closed forest reserve that nobody can enter, not even the government or the government security can enter those places. So you ask yourself, are we going or are we coming?
But I think some of them have been, not all of them. There were some that in recent times, and there have been some, we were even laughing about it the other day, that they appear to be undercover operations. You know, in the last 2 weeks, getting into 3 weeks, quite a number of people have been rounded up, apprehended. Some of them are being processed for court or all of that. I think at least one of them. We read a story about one of these forest reserves, I think last week or 2 weeks ago.
So why can't the government declare a state of emergency on this Galamsey, like they asked us to?
Do we still need that?
Yes.
A state of emergency?
Yes, on the Galamsey fight. We need it. Because it's becoming worse. I'm telling you.
What would that look like?
It's becoming worse. And if you are not careful, the next stage will be something difficult for us to deal with.
If the next
are you asking that we should shut down all mining, whether large scale, small scale, we should just shut it all down for a bit? Is that what the state of emergency will look like?
What they felt was good and they were asking that should be done. They should do it now.
Then.
To a certain extent, I agree with you. If it was good for the goose, it should be good for the gander. And that a state of emergency, the question is what it would look like Sweetie Abochi was asking. But I think we are in a crisis.
We are in a serious crisis.
And what I would say is that in recent times, there appears to, if you look at the EPA boss and some of the others, the regional ministers and the coordination and how they are attacking Galamsey, I feel the ante has been upped. They've upped the ante. But it doesn't change the fact that we are in a serious mess. I mean, now you go to certain places and major road, right? It's not like it has started now. But major road, and to the sides of the road, people are mining.
You see it's there.
No, but it's a huge form of revenue and income for so many Ghanaians. I mean, we have to look at why to solve any to solve any problem. To solve any problem, you first look at why are people doing this. People are doing this because it's a huge form of revenue for the average person who would not have any money coming in. So first of all, you develop a policy where are you going to train them in something else?
Well, they talk about alternative livelihood, but it really is. Should we be considering why they're doing it?
Well, they'll still do it anyway. Even the point is, if you do not address why people are doing something, the problem is they'll do it anyway.
Do you think someone
they'll pop out from?
Do you think someone will leave a $10,000 a month job to come and do alternative livelihood of about $2,000?
And that's the whole point. At some level, it ceases to be alternative livelihood. Those who are saying, oh, I'm doing this because I have no work, there is that bracket. But if you look at it predominantly, it's a greed problem.
Yeah.
Because like Alfred is saying, if he were able to earn 10,000, I'm sure he cried. And if he felt that, oh, I would be safe and I would get it every month, Alfred, wouldn't you consider that is the problem?
Give me a ministerial position, I'll tell you to take it. If I'm going to get 10,000 just like that every month.
But you know what's surprising is, reports that are coming in about NDC members, sympathizers who are taking over the Galamsey.
It's not surprising.
It is because they position themselves as the ones
members and sympathizers taking over toilets and other institutions all over the country.
I'm saying prior to them coming into office, they positioned themselves as the ones who had the solution to the menace.
Before we took over in 2017,
and so to hear
they were in charge.
Well, I'm just saying that it's surprising that the current administration, the NDC government, is, I don't want to say looking on while some of its members are doing the exact same thing that we were campaigning, protesters on the street saying that stop Galamsey, and then you come in and then your people are doing this. And it's almost as if you're shutting one eye and looking at other things with the other one.
When you do politics with Galamsey, that's what happens. Yeah. I'm telling you the truth. When you do politics with it, and that is why when we're fighting it, I kept on saying that we shouldn't go partisan on it. We shouldn't start mentioning that, oh, it's MPP people, it's this person, it's that person, because NDC people are involved. Other Ghanaians are involved. Even foreigners are involved. Chinese are all over the place. So let us tackle it as a menace to the country, as something. In the next 4 or 5 years, if you're not careful, even drinking water through the pipe will be a problem.
Yeah. So
I think that is not new. The Ghana Water Company Limited has been crying for how long now, and talking about the same thing. If you asked me, though, I would say that I'm seeing more action now than I've seen for a long time in handling the situation. What, however, must be done is that we can't let our feet off the gas. Those are the same actions I mentioned a short while ago.
But you know what I find?
You are fully aware of them.
Don't
pretend you don't know them.
Sometimes I think it's also a matter of phrasing things. Like, for instance, America years ago had this anti-war, anti-drugs campaign. Anything anti brings about more. So you don't talk about war. You talk about pro-peace. You see, you don't talk about
what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Anti-Galamsey. You talk about pro-sustainability. You see what I mean? So anything you say anti-for, the irony is it brings about more of the same problem because they're fighting against it.
Rebels
so you have to do pro-sustainability.
This country.
How can you sustain this?
That's what actually the previous government, that's my government, was doing. Instead of now fighting them, you wanted to now regularize them. So when you start regularizing them, what you do is that you tell them that those who are now coming in without proper license, get them out because they will spoil.
You want us to get to this license bit again?
It's a whole lot of that. I'm telling you the truth. It's a whole lot. You have to, as she's saying, don't do it anti. But see how you can now manage them in such a way that now they become their own guards against people who
realize, just to move the conversation forward, because we have just a few minutes left, that over time, even the MPP, right, has tried with some of these positive images, and they have simply not worked. Some people have dug their heels in. To a certain extent, I agree with you. But this has become, like we said, it's beyond livelihood. It's at the point of greed. And at that point, I remember there was a time where a gentleman said that he went for a trip one day and he bought how many urban, bus vehicles. And it is beyond mind-boggling. At this point, that is why I have supported
at a point. Farmer who gave us some land out just to get a house.
Exactly. And he thinks it's also because the viability of his cocoa farm versus what he's getting now, he would rather cash out, so to speak, now. So beyond all of that, I think we need some level of force, which does not necessarily come with mollycoddling and let's do this.
Put them in different industries. You have to, educate, put them in different industries, different types of livelihoods. But I'm telling you, anything that is anti-war, anti-drugs, blah, blah, all you see is more.
Point made.
So anti-Galamsey will lead to more. But, pro-sustainability and how you're going to achieve that will reap better rewards for
Let's take some of your headlines. Let's start with you, Alfred.
The custodian, Sami Uku, appointed Vice President of SME Global for Africa. And then Dampari shows gratitude to Ghanaians. I don't know how, but they said he has. CDM fights Mahama over mass dismissal and demand immediate reversal. MP holds 2025 post-budget workshop in Parliament. And minority dares Nana Jane to join budget debate.
Daring her?
Yeah.
I found it interesting when I read the story.
I don't know how to dare, but...
I wish I could get some more context. Why?
Page 8. Maybe they wanted to show her powers in managing the, what do you call it? They said the new Patriotic Party minority in Parliament has challenged Vice President Professor Jaina Opoku-Agyeman to participate in the debate on the 2025 budget statement, economic policy of government. According to the caucus, as chairperson of the government economic management team, as I said, she should be present in the chamber to articulate the economic policies of the Mahama administration. Did
she say she wasn't going to be present? It's happening tomorrow anyway. We just wait and see if she...
I have said that, they had this economic forum, and I don't know how they managed to put the documents together before even putting the budget together. If you did the economic forum and in 2 days or 3 days, you are reading your budget and going to the market to get opinions and everything and putting it in the budget. So I'm yet to see. I'm waiting for the information or the notes from the economic forum and compare it to the budget and see what has changed.
Right. What I find interesting is that because of the tag of economic management team head, then I think maybe we should get someone who has a security background, because the vice president also heads the police council, right?
Yeah.
Do you get it? The irony of how we... I think, however, why... Look at, what's his name? Aliu Mahama. Look at other people who have been vice presidents. Well, you can say Atta Mills, when he was vice president, because of his tax law background, there was all of that, and the GRE. But the point too is, why was Dr. Bawumia lampooned, especially in that regard, as head of the economic management team? It was because he was touted as, the god of economics. Yeah. And in fact, the former president would say, Bawumia, and all of that, which is why people would say, but you gave all these lectures. But on an ordinary level, a vice president is not expected to be an economic doyen because they come from different backgrounds. But in any case, the minority has its own...
They believe that once
and they can go ahead.
You should have full knowledge of the economy.
What?
You should have full knowledge of the economy.
Full knowledge of the economy doesn't make you an economist.
No,
it doesn't make you an expert.
Should be an economist.
And it doesn't make you someone qualified to have a debate.
No, but she'll contribute to the debate should she choose to. But again, it's Mahama and his vice to decide whether they want to...
If your finance minister comes to dribble you, as has been seen before...
As has been seen before?
Yeah. Previous years.
Did Ken Oforiatta dribble Nanado?
I said previous years.
I'm just asking. You said some as a previous years.
Yes.
Which years?
Oh, you want us to go into detail?
We don't have long enough.
Should I finish the publisher?
You know why that's interesting?
The publisher says...
Because the president at the point will say he was misled. Do you remember those comments? I was misled. So I was just interested in finding out whether, as you are saying, maybe Ken Oforiatta misled.
Now, the publisher says Sami Uku appointed vice president of the SME Global for Africa. Mahama hints at national airline. UG suspends lecturer over sexual misconduct. Minority invites VIP to join budget debate again. CDM slams termination of public and civil servant appointments. And rain-fed agric baying of Ghana's underdevelopment. The UG lecturer thing is what I read a little bit, and I was asking myself, they've been suspended for just about 2 semesters or so. It says the University of Ghana has suspended a senior lecturer and 16 students for their involvement in various acts of misconduct in violation of the university's code of ethics. They were sanctioned for engaging in acts ranging from sexual harassment, falsifying of documents, plagiarism, and clashes on the university campus. This follows a shared notice of the suspension in a memo with staff and students. Mrs. Emilia A.J. Mensah, the registrar of the university, said the lecturer, Dr. Samson Obedapia of the Sociology Department, has been suspended for 2 semesters for sexually harassing a member of the university community.
Right.
So I asked myself, if you suspend someone for 2 semesters, will it stop it or will it change it? What will happen?
There's accountability, I think, if you suspend people and other people get the message that these are the sort of things that are not tolerated.
There have been video,
it is a punitive measure, isn't it? There are different degrees of punitive
There have been video, this thing of some lecturers having encounters with students for marks and all these things. I mean, it's still continued. Because if after all that, this is still there, it means that there is something wrong somewhere.
What you're saying reminds me of a Bible verse. I don't know where exactly it's from. Shall we continue to sin that grace may abound? Are you saying that because these, supposed punitive measures are not bringing you the desired results, we should stop?
No, it's 2 semesters punitive enough.
Yeah, maybe they're going to deduct money from the salaries. You don't really. Maybe we need more details on how this seeks to actually punish the act, but I think it's a step in the right direction.
But is it not? Is that not precisely why, from this angle, that Kenneth Oyata, for example, is pushing against the OSP's tagging that he's a wanted man? In this instance, you have it on your record. You've been suspended for this. Do you know what that does? Just having that on your name, around your neck, suspended for these actions.
Coming back to work.
Let's be fair. I don't know.
After some time, you'll be able to clean it off.
I don't know. What we must look at is the university's guidelines and what punitive, because you see sometimes
anyway, if it's too
you will start saying, oh, he stole a goat and he got X number of years. What does the law say as punishment? So I think we should interrogate.
The story carries their names, does it not?
We can actually.
Yeah, it carries his name, and it says that the registrar noted that those sanctions were to serve as deterrent to others, saying the university would not shield any member of its community involved in the misconduct. So just to.
So naming and shaming.
Yeah, it's a start.
Yeah. I don't know if you have other stories. This is important. I just want to get this out there. GTA organizes 68 at 68 food fair. The Ghana Tourism Authority, under the auspices of the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Creative Arts, hosted the 68 at 68 food fair last Friday at the Kwame Nkrumah Memorial Park. And the event showcased traditional Ghanaian dishes. And is this, not to say it's not enough, but is this all we can do to mark our 68-year celebration and to, put Ghana out there, a food fair? I think there's so much money to be made from the way Ghana has become some sort of hotspot for diasporans to come in and see culture and celebrate with us. We shouldn't limit ourselves to just food fairs.
It's just one of many things that went on.
I'm not seeing so much. We are still in the month of March, which we've all set aside to celebrate Ghana.
Yeah.
How many events have you seen? How many of these things have you seen that actually highlights Ghana?
Yes, but in fairness, the president also did issue a statement, I think, at the national, last week or 2 weeks ago, that because government is cutting back on a lot of expenditure, do you see what I mean? They have to start with themselves in terms of, the events.
But that's on a national level, right? So GTA, the Ministry of Tourism and all that, is this really all we can do?
I do think we
this
have
whole month of March.
Focus on, the economy, improving the economy, making sure people have money in their pockets and things like that.
Cutting back on celebration.
These activities feed into the economy, don't they?
Yeah.
It's not to say that we are scaling back, but as she makes the point, I may not necessarily corroborate everything because I have also seen a few things. But if we are scaling down, what will also be the effect? Because these things also generate revenue, don't they?
Yes, but on Independence Day, we all celebrated it. We celebrated it here when we were discussing, national issues and Independence Day issues.
Right.
They celebrated it, the president celebrated it with the former president, etc. We can, sometimes you can do things to highlight the effect of it, but also we do have to cut back financially.
But cutting back financially and increasing government business in your budget, I wonder where you are heading towards.
How much did he say it was? I think he said it was, the quotes, they got 20 million.
And
all the quotes were 20 million. And, you could scale down and still have a national presence.
He saved about 95% of it.
Which is huge. And they drove just one car.
And then it goes into government business by increasing it to do which particular government business. Only God knows.
Shall we quickly do your headlines, Amanda?
Yes, I think I'll just focus on two stories. I've got the Today newspaper, and it focuses on one of the committee members of the Operation Recover or Loot, saying that it's too early to prosecute suspects. And then the second one I'll do is the US is to impose new entry restrictions on citizens from 43 countries. Yes, so a member of the oral team basically said that it's too early. I think it's premature. People should understand that, that all we did was gather information. We have not even heard from the other side. You know, so this feeds into due process and, you know, waiting to gather. And Operation Recover or Loot is quite a big policy of this particular government, because I think 36 cases are being reviewed that they say is worth $20.49 billion US. So they're going to focus on gathering information and due process. And of course, oral is just a policy, because people seem to misunderstand. Oral is just a policy where they gather the information and then they pass on that information to bodies like the Attorney General's Department and OSP, etc. The second article, I'm going to handle it.
Just briefly on that.
Very briefly, the US to impose new entry restrictions on citizens from 43 countries. This is, of course, a Donald Trump initiative, but the list has yet to be approved by the administration, including the US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and could be amended, officials are told. So there's 3 categories on this list. Partial suspension of visa, US visa issuance, and the second on the list would affect tourists and students for the second group, and for the first group, which includes Syria, Cuba, and North Korea, would set a full visa suspension. And I don't think Ghana's on that list. If people are wondering, but Sierra Leone is on that list.
Okay, well, that's good to know. On the thing about oral, I saw a post from someone about how oral has saved us billions.
Has saved.
Has saved. That's what he said. He listed a number of things that this administration has done in 3 months, and I saw oral has saved us billions. And I thought, let's calm down. Yeah. Let oral actually save us the billions before we start talking about oral saving us billions. But thank you all for coming. It's a wrap for the news review segments. Those who joined us: Amanda Clinton, head of Clinton Consultancy; Alfred Thompson is former deputy director, NIB. Of course, remember that AM Show is brought to you by Waylead Properties. Stick and stay. Sports comes up next. Wow.